just to get started, for all of us to have this as kind of our commonplace, the Seal of Biliteracy is an award that certifies that students have met criteria to demonstrate that they are proficient in English and one or more other languages. And in California, the students affix that seal either to, the districts affix the seal either to their diploma or to their transcripts, right? So it's very simple. State criteria, do they meet it? They get a seal and it goes on to their diplomas or their transcripts. To create that, Californians Together, I should tell you a little bit, I'm the executive director of a group called Californians Together, and we are a statewide coalition of 27 parent, professional, and civil rights organizations. We all come together as organizations solely focused on improving policy and practice for educating English learners. And since our birth in 2001, our official birth, we actually started in 1998, but when we were recognized as, our bylaws and so on and so forth in 2001, we have been struggling with the idea of how do we change the hearts and minds of not only people within school districts, but within the public, to be able to look at the issue of bilingualism and biliteracy as an asset, one that allows students to share their talents and their gifts to their communities, to their state and their nation. And so as an organization in a state that passed an English-only initiative in the 80s and then passed in the late 90s an initiative that actually restricted the state from being able to offer bilingual education unless parents used a very narrow option of signing a waiver out of an English-only program into a bilingual program. So in the context of that, we as Californians Together are trying to figure out how do we change that atmosphere in our state. And I know two people in the audience who said don't recognize us again, but I have to because that's how it started. In Glendale Unified School District, and Joanna Jung and Kristen McCoy are here from Glendale Unified School District, actually retired, but I still see them as being with Glendale. In 1992, they started what they called the Bilingual Competency Award, which was basically the Seal of Biliteracy. But they started it. We took the idea from that district. That district in 1992 began it just for Spanish and English. And today they have students being recognized who are bilingual and who are trilingual in Spanish, Arabic, Armenian, Tagalog, Korean, Japanese, Italian, French, and German. Not only do they have students being recognized in those languages, they have programs in those languages. So they have dual immersion programs in many of those languages or language academies in those languages. So from one district, looking at bilingualism in 2 languages, they have grown to the position where if you're a parent in that district and you want your child to be bilingual, you can almost choose the language you want and have it at almost any school close to you. So for us, that became really, that captured our attention, the potential, right? The potential of a seal to change the hearts and minds. So we tapped into, what I said, from Glendale, 4 other districts prior to our work started replicating what they were doing. So we had 5 districts that were experimenting with this, and so from a very few examples, we took that to a policy campaign, right? We gathered champions all over in the legislature, and we had 2 bills that reached our governor's desk. Now, that governor, you probably all know, he was an actor as a governor. You all probably know who he was. Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor, right? And he vetoed the bill twice, which means we got it all through committees and everything, and he vetoed it twice. But we were not daunted by that. We said, we know this is still a good deal for us, right? So what we did is we took a whole nother year and a half, 2 years, and we went from district to district. We went from different areas of the state, and we conducted trainings using this little booklet. And the trainings, districts brought teams to this 3-hour training on how to start a Seal of Biliteracy in a school district. And after 3 hours, those teams went back and they literally went and got those Seals of Biliteracy instituted as policy in their districts. So from 5 districts, our statewide campaign grew to 55 school districts. And at that point, when we had the 55 school districts, we went back to the legislature, because thank God we had a new governor, and we had new leadership at our state board and a new state superintendent of public instruction, much more open and all supportive of the idea. And we did get that bill signed. We got support from the entire education coalition, because after that period of time when so many school districts were already about this work, the support from the Teachers Association, the Administrators Association, the School Boards Association, the Parents Association. We had support across the community. We had chambers of commerce that were in support of it. And so we had gathered these allies because we had these lighthouse of school districts across our state implementing, right? And from that, we, as you can see, we gathered a lot of support, and from that, our governor, Governor Jerry Brown, signed the bill creating the State Seal of Biliteracy in September 2011. The criteria is in the bill. Now, some states are doing it differently, but we felt we needed to put the criteria in the bill because we did not want to negotiate this across communities and across the politics of what that would be. So we just, because we had been working with so many districts, we had a sense of the criteria, so we put it in the bill, and I'm not going to go through it, but it's in your booklet also. But what's important is there's criteria to prove your proficiency and your literacy in English, and then there is optional criteria, various ways of proving proficiency and literacy in the other language. Because for each language there may be one resource or one avenue, and for another language there may not. So we had a series of possibilities for showing proficiency and biliteracy in the other languages, and districts can employ all of them. Certain kids do it this way, other kids do it this way, or they can choose one. But it was open for people to be able to qualify in a variety of ways. And so what happens is, it's very simple. The districts submit a form, a one-page form saying, I have X amount of kids who met the criteria, and they say for which languages, and they also tell the department if the students were former English learners or not. That is it. They submit this one-page form, comes back with the seal to put on the diplomas or the transcripts. And so you have an artistic rendering, and then you literally have, oops, a photograph of the seal that gets affixed to, as I said, the transcripts or the diplomas. So the first year, when the bill passed, the very first year, the districts were informed in March, and of course graduations are in May and June, so they had a very short window to get the data into us. But in the first year we had over 10,000 seniors that were recognized and did get the seals from the state. 93 school districts, 2 county offices, 16 charter schools, representing 29 different languages, including American Sign Language. And what for us was very interesting, out of those 10,000 plus students, 4,300 of them were former English learners. So for us, we took a look at that on first blush, and we said, we're not so sure how good that is. But then we reflected on the fact that English learners in California are only 23% of the state population, but they were 43% of the recipients for the state seal. And then what we knew also is that many of the recipients in the other 57% were already bilingual students when they came in, right? They were bilingual by virtue of how they had been brought up in their homes. And then we knew another large group of students who were being recognized with the seal were language heritage students, where the language was in their family, but they themselves didn't speak it, but they attained it, you know, through their high school and through their work. So we knew the other 57% were not just English-only students. They were a very diverse population, so we felt very good about that. And so you can see here's kind of 72% in the first year were Spanish speakers, and you can see the other languages. So then this last June, again, we were very excited. Now 74%, you can see the different languages. French always seemed to be the second one. I think that's because of the AP test in the foreign language department. But then you can see the other languages, Mandarin and Japanese and Korean and so on and so forth, many, many languages. So this data from last June, now the numbers more than doubled. We had 21,655 seniors getting recognized for the Seal of Biliteracy last June. And again, 40% plus were former English learners. From 93 school districts, we had 170 school districts participating. And, oh, the numbers of languages aren't there. I think it was 26 and it went to 29. I can't remember. I don't know why that's not there. But anyhow, we were just overwhelmed that in one short period of time, the numbers had doubled. We have a sense that that will grow again tremendously this coming year, and we'll let you know. So from this, we really wanted to see, people had been asking us, so what is the cachet of this seal? So what does it mean? They get a seal, they're recognized. What does it mean to them? And I think that question was asked of me by our friend here from Pennsylvania. She asked me that very question. So what does it mean when they graduate? So Dr. Patricia Gandara, who's a professor at UCLA and also the co-director of the Center for Civil Rights, conducted this study with colleagues, as you can see, Civil Rights Project, and they really wanted to know what were employees' preferences when it comes to hiring people, right? So let's see. And was there advantage to bilingualism? So let's see what we've got here. So this is what led to her doing the study. One is that the census, the current census for us, really did show a surprising number of families for whom a language other than English was a part of their profile, right? 1 out of 5 families our census showed in California had proficiency in a language and spoke a language other than English. And that from 2006, a little over 200 two-way immersion programs existed, but yet that grew to 306 in 2012. Now this is in a state, again, I told you, where we have, you know, a law that says you really can't do bilingual unless you get parents to do all of this work in terms of requesting it. But we had this tremendous growth, over 1/3 more projects in a very short period of time. And of course, the fact that the Seal of Biliteracy was now in its 2nd year and obviously gathered a lot of attention from districts across the state. In addition, the researchers really did notice that doing this kind of research had potential for informing practice in other states. And as of right now, we have 3 other states who have state seals of biliteracy passed by their legislature, that being New York, Texas, and Illinois. And sitting right now in legislators, unless you all can add to that list for me that I know of, there are 4 more states that are looking to pass, and that's New Mexico, Florida, Massachusetts, and Maryland. And so, you know, we could, by the end of this year, have 8 states very interestingly positioned really in different parts of the country, right, with a state seal of biliteracy. And I was just talking to a colleague in North Carolina saying that they're going to try to have a state seal of biliteracy. They're not going to go through their legislature. They're going to create policy. They're hoping to create policy through their state board of education. So everybody doesn't have to do it the exact same way, but it is interesting that this idea of honoring language and biliteracy really has captured the imagination of so many people across the nation.
Can I just share with you in New Jersey quickly?
I know New Jersey's interested. I have another slide saying who's interested, but this was, yes, say New Jersey, what's happening?
Well, just that we're not going through the legislature at this point because I did reach out and did not get any positive feedback. So what we've done, NJT, still NJBE, and FLENGE, our foreign language organization, we've gotten together, and as we're co-sponsoring a seal of biliteracy in the districts in the state. So we're offering that recognition.
Great. So their state ESL, State World Language Association and their State Bilingual Association have come together, and they themselves are going to be offering the seal, which will generate tremendous interest. And once you are kind of replicating what we did, once you have that grassroots implementation across your school districts, there will be interest. There will be interest. Any place else we should know about?
Well, Texas is just kind of in a funky space right now where it had a bill go forward, it kind of died in committee. They are offering recognition of bilingual distinction if you take 3 Spanish classes or 3 foreign language classes, which isn't really
Right.
biliterate yet.
Right. It's not a high level yet, but you know.
And they're not calling it a seal of biliteracy, they're just kind
A recognition,
They've
right?
got recognition for AP exams, recognition for dual credit, and now they're recognizing
So but the issue really is how, again, how do we change the hearts and minds and move it forward, right? And so everybody may have a little different avenue to take, but it still is adding another piece to the puzzle, another way of talking about it, another forum to be able to speak to the issue of how important this is for our students who are going to be prepared for the 21st century, right? So we're excited about it. We're very excited about it. And our state superintendent, when he sent out the very first notice to the districts about our state seal, he's very supportive of the state seal. He co-sponsored the bill with us, which is almost unheard of in our state to have a state soup co-sponsor the bill. But in the letter to the districts, he said fluency in a second language helps our students to be well prepared to compete in the global market, right? So we really have people in many places talking about the advantages, and that's really what we were trying to create. So, so here are the research questions that the people at UCLA, the Center for Civil Rights, posed. And the research questions were, do employers seek out bilingualism as a desired trait when hiring? Are there specific sectors where bilingualism is a plus factor? What languages are most solicited? What advantages do employers perceive bilingual speakers to hold? And does possession of the state seal of biliteracy confer any particular advantage for job seekers? And then the last, do bilingual people have any real advantage in the labor market? So here we go. Now, it hasn't been published yet. It's a chapter in a book that's supposed to be published by summer, but of course the authors told me, you never know when the book is really coming out, but it's supposed to be available in the summer, but we're getting a sneak preview, okay? They said we could share this. So they first, of course, did a literature review, and with traditional questions that they wanted to ask in terms of the value of non-English speakers learning English. And what happened was these studies, you can see if you read them, I'm not going to read them too because I want to move on and then have some conversation, were very conflicting. Some of the studies said no, Spanish speakers didn't have an advantage. Some said yes, they would get a higher salary. All these studies that they did the literature review on really did not have a definitive answer. And so their goal was to clarify the advantages for bilingual job seekers. That was the goal of the study. They had 289 surveys that were completed by over a 6-month period by generally human resources people in a variety of industries. You'll see 183 they did in person, and then others were just online. And so we had human resource directors and hiring managers. You can see the breadth of people, so it was very representative of what the employment options might be for a graduate. They went to large industry, they went to small private organizations, nonprofits. It was heavily surveyed, mostly in Northern California and then in sort of the Los Angeles area, Long Beach metro area. But the companies represented 10 different sectors of the employment field, right? So that's what I think is the most interesting part. So first question was, do you look for bilingualism as a desired trait when you hire? And it turned out that it was a desirable trait in almost every single industry, right? And you can see for some positions, for all positions, that's way over 2/3, right? Way over 2/3. And the industries where there was the more interpersonal relation of the employee, the higher the demand for, well, that obviously makes sense. The higher demand for for employees who might have bilingual skills. So in retail, it was 100%. Everybody from retail said they wanted bilingual employees. And then you can see the difference. That manufacturing and construction was the lowest, but even at that, it was 88% when they wanted to, whether it was desirable or not. No, this is just in California. This is a California study, just in California, right? So, but we're quirky, so it's probably the same anywhere else. We're kind of quirky. So then the question is, well, what languages were they looking for? What languages were most desirable? Now, this is for California again, and you can see that the 2 top languages are Spanish and Chinese, and then Korean, and then so on and so on and so on. The 4th one says any. That's not a specific language, right? If you're thinking that's a language you don't recognize, it's just any language would be great for some of them, right? So that was interesting too. And then what advantages might someone with dual language skills bring to a job, right? So remember, what are the advantages for the employer to have somebody who has those skills? And so what I think so interesting is, you know, more effective customer service and marketing, right? Over 60% of the employers said that for their answer. And then translating documents and helping with advertising. So, you know, people are thinking about, how do I relate to the community? How do I get out? How do I get my message out there, right? Very clear. And then I love the one, 40% said because of the diverse coworkers, that they can communicate with each other, right? That they're able to talk to each other. So you can see the different, and then of course, creating a welcoming work environment, the possibility of having a more welcoming work environment. So very interesting in terms of the response from the employers. And then here's the one that we like. If you're considering two candidates and all things being equal, would the candidate who's bilingual and biliterate have an advantage, right? And again, in every sector, they said the likelihood of that would be very, very high. And so yes was absolutely yes, 66%, right? And then maybe 7. So again, we're at 2/3. We're still at the same thing. 2/3 of the employers saying that most likely, if not absolutely, two candidates being equal, those who are bilingual would have an advantage for jobs. And then again, across the sector. Now, look at the first one, management companies, 100%. You know, we had retail before, but this is management companies, right? 100%. And retail was next, and arts and entertainment and food service, only 83%, right? So, now, here was the question about the Seal of Biliteracy. Would that translate like the previous question, right? And a lot of the employers had never heard of the Seal of Biliteracy. Of course, they had to first explain it to them. And then they said, considering that you will have some people applying, and on the application they'll say they have the Seal of Biliteracy, what cachet does it have for you then? And again, almost the same, right? 50, maybe plus 26, because again, it was something new, they're not sure of it. We're up to 2/3 again, right? Up to 2/3. So, and again, you can see the likelihood of which areas. But it's so interesting now that arts, entertainment, and food service is #1, where it was the lowest on the other one, right? So it's so interesting that depending upon how they see it and how they hear the message, there is a real advantage, though, for any and all of the sectors. So the conclusions were that every sector, employees are looking for employees with bilingual skills. They recognize the value of bilingual employees and what they bring to the workplace, and that bilingual candidates as well as state seal of biliteracy holders do have an advantage when receiving a job offer. And for us, it's really clear that the United States continues to be much more linguistically diverse, and so that really translates on having employees that represent the population that's out there, right? The issue of anticipating higher earnings, that did not come out yet clearly in the study, whether it would be uniform across the industry sectors about higher earnings. But the anticipation is that if businesses are looking for that, and that there are more and more candidates that are available, then in fact there may be a more competitive piece, and that salary might be an issue coming up, right? That's their projection.
So, clarification question. I was wondering if they had disaggregated out as far as the different social status levels of jobs. They're showing the retail, et cetera, being quite high, and we all know that that's the low end of the pay scale.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm understanding that last point correctly, you're saying it didn't disaggregate that out as far as finding.
No, when I'm anticipating higher earnings, that meant being bilingual got you a higher salary. That's what they're anticipating. That the fact that you have these bilingual skills, and it will end up being more competitive with more students being out there, being able to say that they have it and they can certify that they have it. It may be more competitive now, and they may be looking towards a higher salary, recognizing the additional skills. That's what they're anticipating. No, depending upon the salary that's paid by these different industry sectors, I don't think they disaggregated that. So, but as I say, the chapter is not out yet, so this is just what they've talked to me about. So we'll have to wait and see whether it's in the chapter or not. Yes, I will. I'll tell them to go back and, no, it's already with the publisher, no way. So that's one piece of new work for us. The other piece that we're very excited about is there's a doctoral student at Loyola Marymount University. She was in a school district as the district coordinator that implemented the State Seal of Biliteracy, and she's doing her doctorate on what is happening with the implementation of it across the state. So what are really good practices? What are things that seem to promote it? What are things that we should build in for other districts? So I want to share, she just got approved, the IRB and everything. The surveys have gone out. Some of you in California, I don't know if you've gotten a survey, if you have the seal. But her name is Tanya De Leon, and her chair is Dr. Magali Lavarens from Loyola Marymount University. And so we're really excited. She will, by the end of the year, she says, have the results. But to see what she's looking at for us, and for all of us, I think will be of interest. One is she wants to gain a better understanding to the extent of which English learners are participating in the State SEAL program. Examine the importance of the SEAL and how it may improve or influence the an increased number of bilingual programs in the state. And finally, to develop some policy recommendations for programs for English learners. And you'll see how this builds into our next initiative that I'm going to describe. So this is how she's doing it. She's got research questions. What factors led to the implementation of the State SEAL in your district? And for those early adopters, those 50 school districts that I talked to you about, she's going to talk to them about having as early adopters of the State SEAL, are they implementing language programs leading to the State SEAL? So that they thought, well, gee, we're recognizing all these kids and we could recognize more. Maybe there are some programs that we should start thinking about leading kids towards attaining the SEAL. And then the third one, to what extent do English learners, former English learners, are they participating in the State SEAL program? So she's doing surveys, interviews, and document analysis. And here's some of the questions. This is what, oh, okay, here we go. Here's some of the questions that she's asking, and this is what I wanted to talk a little bit about. So in your district, did you form a task force to create the Seal of Biliteracy, right? And the reason why that's an important question is because if you form a task force, then you build in buy-in, right? You build in buy-in versus, if you saw our criteria, you could pump it into a computer and it would pump out your list and you could send it to the State Department and get those seals. But that's not the point of the Seal of Biliteracy. The point is really to make it visible, to gather champions in your school district, and to make it a value across schools and across the community. So the question of whether you formed a task force for implementation is a very important question for us to know. And then, of course, who was on it? And did you do like North Carolina did, pull in the world language people with the English learner people? So again, you build support and you build advocacy across a wider scope of allies within your system. So that's one of the questions. In addition, she's asking, beyond what the state requires for the State SEAL, has your district added additional requirements? Are there additional things you need to be looking at? And so some districts have done that, and what they do then is that they, well, I'll talk to you, I'll explain that in a minute. And then, is there a student application process for the State Seal of Biliteracy? Not required by state law, but when we went around the state training districts initially on how to implement, we told them to have an application process because we think young people should stand up and say, I'm proud of being bilingual, biliterate, and I want to be recognized for that additional skill that other students don't have. And so we have sample applications on our website. They're like one page, they're simple, but the fact that they have to go to the counselor's office, get the form, or it's given to them in their advisory period by the counselors, the fact that they stand up and say, this is important to me, again, sets a very different atmosphere than, oops, Oh, I got the seal on my diploma, how nice, right? So, and some people could be doing that, but we're asking, what are you doing beyond that, right? Do you have an application process? And then, in addition to just getting the little insignia on the diploma, what else are you doing to make that award visible in your school district? And so what we suggest is that students march at graduation with a medallion that says that they are bilingual and biliterate. This is not what I like doing, but this is not a sales pitch. But all the districts were saying, I want a medallion. Don't you guys have a medallion? So finally we have one. So you have a flyer for a medallion. So districts, this one says, you know, State Seal of Biliteracy. So we have students marching at graduation with a State Seal of Biliteracy medallion. Some districts have cords, you know how they march with cords, and there's a color cord for biliteracy and bilingualism. Some districts have a patch on the stole that they've designed, and some districts have multiple medallions. So in Glendale Unified, they have one color for being bilingual, English in one language, another color for being trilingual, English in 2 languages, and even a third medallion. So when students march, not only do they know that that's because they're bilingual and biliterate, but they know for how many languages that certifies, right? So what do you do for recognition, which is critical, we think? The other thing about recognition is having a celebration. And so how many of you in your states have things called senior awards nights, you know, where all the kids they get their scholarship awards, the athletes get their awards, right? So most people do across the state. Well, we tell the districts, at that senior awards night is where you put the medallion on the kids for the Seal of Biliteracy, right? Because they need to be there with the athletes and with the scholarship award winners, and they need to be visible across the community. Now, I've been to several senior awards nights, and I have to say, you know, I always get choked up at those because I look in the audience, and there are like 65, 70, 80 kids getting a medallion put on them by their principal or their counselor, and their parents, who would never have seen the inside of a senior awards night, are there cheering and smiling and taking pictures for the pride of their children who have maintained and sustained this talent and gift of bilingualism and biliteracy. So those are the kinds of things we want to collect, right? With this, this doctoral candidate will be collecting for us so that we can tell the story more amply. So some of the other questions are, they're also talking about questions about district outreach and resources that might be used. So a lot of what has to happen is initially when you do this, that you have to do, you know, some outreach to the students because they themselves might not know about it and might not be aware of it. So a lot of districts have designed brochures, and these are all posted again on our website. So districts have made brochures in multiple languages, and that these brochures are handed out when the counselors go into classrooms. Counselors go into world language classes. They go into the English learner classrooms in 9th grade to tell the students in 9th grade, we have a State Seal of Biliteracy program. You all should aspire to receive that award, and here's what the criteria is. We have a short video that many of you have seen on the Seal of Biliteracy. I have some copies of it here, but it's on YouTube. And so in one school district, the counselors go into the advisory periods and they literally show the video to the students in 9th grade. And it's a video of 3 students who had qualified for the Seal of Biliteracy, and it's through their voices that we hear about what the State Seal is. And the counselors tell us that the students identify with those students. There's a Spanish-speaking student who became bilingual, there's a Mandarin-speaking student who became bilingual, and then there's an English-speaker Anglo student who became bilingual. So all the students identify with one of them and see that as a possibility. So outreach is really critical. In one school district, in the high school district, they go down, they're just a high school district, so they go down to their feeder elementary school districts. And for the 8th graders, you know, when you go and tell them this is what high school is going to be about, they go down, and when they go tell them what high school is about, they tell them about the State Seal of Biliteracy. That same district has a mandatory registration day for freshmen, and the parents need to come. At the parent meeting, they tell the parents in 9th grade about the Seal of Biliteracy. So outreach, resources, this is really about the only resource and time for some staff person to do it that this program costs. But we want to collect what districts are doing in that area too through the doctorate. Oh, wait, where's the big announcement? Okay, so, but any quick questions that anybody had about this piece before I move on? Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
So it's like,
You'll see it. I have a picture of a student. She's holding her diploma. You'll see where the seal is.
if you send it electronically, it usually comes through a computer. Do you have to print it and then put a seal on?
Oh, I don't know.
Or do you,
Do we know? Well, I think, to tell you the truth, I think our State Department, I've heard them talking, that they are going to make it electronic because even printing, they bought a gazillion of the seals, but they're running out. So they're thinking of not buying more. You know, we're all looking for some way to save. So I think eventually they are going to do it electronically onto the, that's what I heard this last meeting that I went to. Not this coming year, but the year after, it may be a PDF, or it may be that they just print it out, yes. I have heard that.
When you said our website, are you referring to the Seal of Biliteracy website?
There is a Seal of Biliteracy website. It's www.sealofbiliteracy.org, and that information's in the booklet. And if you go there and you click on Steps for Implementation, so when I told you about brochures and outreach, so I think step 6, don't quote me, but I think step 6 is outreach. So if you click on that, it'll tell you about outreach, and then you look below, and there are PDFs of about 7 different or 8 different brochures. Step 1 is having your board pass a resolution that they want to have the state Seal of Biliteracy, again, making it public, right? And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's about 15, 20 different local district resolutions, and you can see they're all similar because we've all posted them so everybody can use them. No one should start. So yes, there's a lot of resources on that page. Our State Department, though, if you go to www.cde.ca.gov, and that's in the booklet also, and then you put in the search Seal of Biliteracy, you'll get their webpage to see what the letters that have gone out and what they're asking of the school district. So those are all resources. For college, right. Now, they originally were supposed to be interviewing also college admissions officers, but they didn't send me that data, so I don't know for sure if they had enough admissions officers to warrant some conclusions on it, but initially they were going to. And so I can't respond to you. I know anecdotally, many school districts and teachers have told me that, in fact, yes, it made a real difference, especially when students make it as part of their essay or so on and so forth. It does have them stand out. And of course, if qualifying involved the SATs, qualifying involved either the SAT or the IB or the advanced placement, immediately they get college credit, right? So there's an advantage there. But 2 students all being equal on an application form, I don't have an answer to that yet, except for anecdotally that people have telling us yes, right? We just don't have that yet documented, right? So, any other questions? Those are all good questions. Anybody else? Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Spanish, English, and Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And the three levels is not right to put it herself because they say no evidence. Where is this place? They need some evidence. So they just
For Chinese, for the Chinese, or
just 1 second. They pull some students from several schools and they give you just a few from
So I do know what's happening in Sweetwater. Sweetwater was one of our 5 school districts that went ahead, prior to even our working statewide with districts, they went ahead and created their own criteria. This last year, they revised the district criteria and they have adopted the state criteria. So I was with one of the Sweetwater administrators 2 days ago, and they this year are going to be using the state criteria specifically, they said, to recognize a much wider group of students who qualify.
But at this point, which is exactly the place they place is, because we don't have exactly meeting with parents, we don't have exactly meeting with the students, and we are 90% Latino.
Right.
So they can have more than 10 students. I think the last time I saw just a few, which is I not really believe they have those scores because just they decide an administrator.
Right. Right, and I think the district, as I told you, I think the district actually said that in the meeting that we were in, and that's why they're now adopting the state criteria. Now, your issue of more outreach, I think that's a very good issue to take to the district, that they need to do more outreach with the parents and the students so they know about it, and that's why we have it in the doctoral candidates, and that we will be documenting that, which you can use when you go to the district. The outreach is critical, because the more outreach you do, the more students you'll be recognizing. But in fact, they are going to recognize a much broader group of students because they've revised their criteria.
But which is the best way to start? Because when we try as a parent, it's really hard because we say no place for this. Later on, as administrator, it's the same issue. So is something in the law in place?
No, there's nothing in the law that requires districts to do it. There's nothing in the law that requires how the districts do it. It's optional. So as you saw, we have 1,000 districts in California, 170 last year. It almost doubled from the year before. I know we'll have more. Sweetwater will be one of the new districts this coming year because they didn't do it last year. We will have more districts. But how they do it is really an issue of organizing in your own community. So let me move on a little farther.
I was just going to say, if you're here in California, the LCAP, the plans districts are developing currently.
Could be a part of that.
Demonstrate how they're offering additional college and career pathways to a broader audience of students. This is a good thing to be included in that LCAP plan.
Absolutely. So Stacy's from a county in our state, and what's happening is we have a whole new funding formula, and districts have to write a plan, and one of the things they have to describe is how they're increasing and improving services for English learners. This could clearly be a piece of that plan. I saw one other question.
Our students were also, we asked our students to take the AP exam, almost going to 4s and 5s, and people were shocked. I said, well, they speak Spanish already. They said, well, your kids speak English, and they're not passing the exam. What's the difference?
Right, exactly, exactly. So it really does motivate a lot more people standing up, taking exams, showing their abilities, showing the benefits and the real potential contributions they could make to our cities and our states, yes. Right, yay.
One of the current concerns that's come up with parents is that how do you know that a child becoming bilingual can be attributed to what the school is doing? How do you know if it's not the parent encouraging?
Right. We don't care in California. I have to tell you, we don't really care in California because anybody in the United States who has sustained the ability in 2 languages from birth or has learned it in schools ought to be recognized because all of those students have the potential of contributing tremendously to our community, to our families, to our state, and to our nation. So we don't really care if they did it through their families or they did it through the school or they did it with the school and their families. The point is they've reached that level of proficiency that should be honored and should be recognized and should count. It should give them the advantage of going on for college and career readiness. It really, for us, it was not part of our conversation because we said all of it is good, right? All of it's good. Last question. I want to move on to our announcement.
It sounds like it's more less of about how great the school did at doing this and more about just recognizing value.
Right, and it's how great the students are. It's how great the students are, right? Now, but with that in mind, it's a good question. I don't want to, in terms of who gets the award, no, but with that in mind, the question is a good question. So we in California think that we have really created some momentum here. I mean, across our state, there's a lot going on with this conversation, a lot. And so as Californians together, we said, okay, so what would be the next step for moving this conversation forward? And we are going to, for the very first time, announce at our state conference this new award called Multiple Pathways to Biliteracy, District Recognition Award. And so what we're going to do is build upon, as I told you, the momentum. And the reason why we're doing it is because so many people, parents and teachers and advocates and school districts are asking the questions, well, gee, if the district thinks it's so good to be bilingual and biliterate and the state thinks it's so good, where are the programs? Where are the programs helping the kids to get there? So I'm going back to your question, right? Where are the programs that help students get there? And those questions are being raised all over the state in many different districts. And so we thought, well, what could we do to promote multiple pathways, you know, to biliteracy and bilingualism? And so we've created this campaign that's meant to focus on attention for building pathways, either recognizing districts who have them or encouraging districts to build these pathways to again, demonstrate the kids are adequately prepared for the 21st century and college and career readiness. So we've established criteria. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's not quite in stone yet, but we're pretty much ready to put it out there. We've established criteria, and we have defined about 15, 17 different multiple pathways that could lead to biliteracy, pre-K through 12th grade. The reason why we want to have so many is because we want the districts to see that there are options, right? It's not all one way. I think part of where we were when our proposition passed, our English-only instructional proposition passed, is everybody thought there was this one program that we were jamming down everybody's throat, right? And we got bad press on it. But I think now for us to think about these multiple pathways and districts having options and different options for different grade levels, but all of it leading towards seniors being proficient in bilingual when they graduate, we think that that is going to be very engaging for some school districts. The first awards are going to be announced at our state bilingual conference. This will be our second year. We have a state seal of biliteracy recognition reception, and our state superintendent, this is the second year he'll be there, he hands out certificates to the school districts. We'll be recognizing the new school districts, and we will be recognizing for the first time 2 or 3 districts with our new award. In addition to that, we are entering we have a new bill to create this as legislation. We're going to follow the same pathway we did before. We'll be recognizing districts now while we're working on the legislation. We just got the author confirmed for our bill, and we're very excited about who it is. It's Assemblymember Bloom. He's the chair of the Assembly Appropriations Committee, which is an important one for us because our bills usually get stuck in appropes because they'll say there's no money. But if the chair has a bill, the bill usually gets out, right? So we're excited about our author. He's excited about the bill, and we're going to be moving that forward very shortly. We do know a couple of districts who already have these multiple pathways, and I don't want to divulge because we haven't announced, nor have we even talked to any school districts, but as an example, I did describe to you what goes on in Glendale School District. Multiple pathways to biliteracy. That's the example that we're looking for, right? Across districts, across grade levels. Glendale's biggest problem with their multiple pathways is that when all these kids get to high school, how do you have enough sections in the program to sustain a Korean program, a Spanish program? It's very difficult, and so they're having to have this conversation. What happens? How many of these languages can we sustain, and at what high schools, and so on and so forth? It's not that they don't want to, it's just that there are so many kids, and it requires so many. So we're looking for places like that, and we want to hold them up and have them be recognized as the models for others in the state. So that's going to be our latest adventure, and hopefully we'll be reporting on it, next year. But we're excited about the potential, and we're excited about the piece of legislation. The other thing that we have in the legislation is that there are statewide recognition programs. We have like a distinguished schools for Title I, and then we have Title I achieving schools and so on and so forth. So we are asking the state to have, for each of those recognitions of schools and districts, to have a biliteracy, a specific recognition in that. So Title I distinguished schools by literacy, right? California, distinguished Title I achieving schools by literacy, distinguished schools by literacy. And there's a precedence for it, because with distinguished schools, there's an arts special recognition. So we know that we're not the first to ask for it. So we'll see. We'll let you know. But that's kind of where we're going to now. So I kind of want to end, which I think, and gives us time for some questions, and show you just some of our students. So here are students from Azusa Unified School District. You can see they have certificates. They're wearing medallions. This is at their senior awards night. There's a company called Velasquez Press. You've probably heard their names. They're the people who are giving you these bumper stickers. I support the Seal of Biliteracy. They have created their own medallions, and districts that they work with, they donate the medallions to them. So even that cost, if you work with the company, they give you their medallions, and their medallions are lovely also. There's, yes, here's their medallions. You can see they're also lovely. So that's one school district. Here's a senior at a graduate from Santa Ana Unified School District. Can you see the seal down at the bottom there? That's the seal, okay? So you're asking, where is so there's the seal. And she has a medallion that's on her arm. They created their own medallion. It's so beautiful. Where's their medallion? Anyways, it's got all these flags of the world in the middle, and it's absolutely beautiful. So, well, if I find it, I'll pull it out. I'm not prepared, obviously, to pull out that medallion. But anyhow, they created their own. It's heavy. It's really nice. So, and here's Baldwin Park. And they also have the Velasquez Press. This is the senior awards night. They get certificates. They get little seals on their certificates. And here's Glendale Unified School District. So you can see their medallions that they're wearing at graduation. And when I talk about creating pathways, in the booklet that you have, and some of you came in late and I have plenty more booklets, in the booklet we describe pathway awards. So when we initiated this endeavor, we did focus on the state seal, but we also focused on pathway awards. So in the booklet it describes pathway awards that you might offer in preschool, maybe at 3rd grade if you have a transitional bilingual program, maybe at the end of 5th grade, at the end of elementary, or maybe at the end of middle. And there's criteria that we suggest. Here's the little preschool ribbon. It says, Yo soy bilingüe, I'm bilingual. And kids get this for being in a preschool program that supports biliteracy. We don't have criteria for little preschoolers, but we do recognize the students who are in a pathway preschool program that supports the development of both languages. And we have preschools that are awarding kids their little biliteracy pathway award that says Yo soy bilingüe, I'm bilingual, right? So so here's these students are 3rd graders at Hoover Community School. The white ribbon is because they demonstrated proficiency in English and Spanish for language arts. The green ribbon is because they demonstrated proficiency in English and Spanish and math. And the trophy is because they demonstrated proficiency in English and Spanish and language arts and math. And the auditorium is jam-packed with parents taking photographs. And if you download our DVD on YouTube, if you just go to YouTube, Seal of Biliteracy, you can see there's a DVD on both the elementary program, but the elementary program is also embedded in the larger video on the Seal of Biliteracy. And you'll hear parents talking about their kids and the kids themselves. They'll just bring a tear to your eye. It's wonderful. So, and these are 5th graders from San Jose Unified School District. They developed their own little medallion for the 5th graders, you can see. And I'll take questions in a minute. So we like to say the world is richer than is possible to express in any one language. Okay, so I'll take questions.
When you recognize the students for passing the assessment in English and Spanish, your state allows students to take it in both languages?
We did until this year. We had a state assessment in English that counted for accountability, but we had a state assessment, an academic assessment in Spanish, it wasn't part of the accountability system, but yes, the students could take both.
I just want to mention that in a county like ours, Santa Clara County, where we have 35 different districts, one of the things that's been helpful is for the county to take responsibility of some of the coordination and having a task force and developing some resources to help get started. So we too, following the state's or the Seal of Biliteracy web information, have a booklet and some videos and other things that are available for everybody to check out and see what our multiple pathways are, what they might look like.
So here's what's so exciting. We did have the governor veto our bill twice. Of course, we were depressed by the whole thing. But in fact, it made us all that much stronger and much more creative about what we wanted to do with this, right? So Santa Clara County from day one saw this as an advantage for the students in their county. Orange County was another county that looked at that. And they have done independent work on their own that has taken us far beyond what we think we could possibly have done. So in Santa Clara County, they just created this incredible toolkit called Educating for Global Competence, the Value of Multilingualism. They have a website with videos, resources, documents. The videos are of their Chamber of Commerce chair talking about the value of multilingualism for global competency. And so it's these voices that are out there that are talking about how important this is for our students in the 21st century that are much bigger and much more important than that little seal. Do you understand what I'm saying, right? It's the seal is so valuable for the student, but for us in the state of California, it's these multiple voices that are speaking to this issue of bilingualism and biliteracy, and Santa Clara County has done an exceptional job. This is available on their website. They have a whole website, so if you just take that down and go to their website, it's a great resource. In Orange County, the very first time last year, they had a recognition program for schools and school districts who had dual immersion programs or biliteracy programs. And you don't know Orange County, but in Orange County in California, it's one of the most conservative counties in our state, and the place was packed. I was overwhelmed. I could not. There was standing room only, literally. So, in terms of this business about hearts and minds, we've struck a chord. And we invite you all to participate with us. As a matter of fact, we'd love everybody to participate with us.
I like the piece about doing the comparison, if there could be something that could be done to study the award schools or those high-performing schools that are, noted by Title I, and how many of those happen to be schools where there are higher concentrations of English learners, because what we heard yesterday from Oella was that it was just depressing data on our students and achievement, and yet since Wednesday, all we've been hearing is, the successes, the achievements, everything that promotes student, not just language development achievement, but content achievement too. And so I know you're really super busy, but you could also help us out in the field with sharing that information with the U.S. Department of Education.
So, I think let's see. No, it wasn't Margaret, but Oella at one point did see the work that we were doing with the State Seal of Biliteracy, and they had a website on innovations for English learners, and the very first web page that they did an announcement had the State Seal of Biliteracy on it for California to try and spread the word across the state. And so, I think they continue to look at the work that we're doing. I forgot to say that at the general session, and we probably have to stop in a few minutes, but at the general session, a congresswoman is being recognized. Her name is Julia Brownley, and so sad that she just could not, her schedule did not allow her to be there today. So you're going to see me. But anyways, she was our author of our State Seal of Biliteracy bill. Her name is Julia Brownley, from the Santa Barbara Ventura area of our state, and she got elected to Congress a year and a half ago. And the first bill she introduced was a bill to support state seals of biliteracy. There was funding in it for districts who wanted to initiate a state seal of biliteracy, and funding in it for districts who have one to enhance their program. Well, she's in the House, right? She is a congresswoman, and Democratic bills do not get out of committee in the House, right? So her bill hasn't gone anywhere. But the fact that she introduced it, again, the conversation that other people were having with her, and hopefully midterm elections, I'm not suggesting how you ought to vote, but if midterm elections brought any changes about, maybe Julia's bill would get out. Maybe we would have that on a nationwide basis, right? It's her intent. It's definitely her intent to do that because she saw what happened in California, right? So we're so proud of her being our author and now being in Congress and taking that message to the Capitol. So yes, I don't know. Again, you know, we are a state organization and we're barely treading water on all our state issues. We are overwhelmed. But this one, you know, we do obviously talk with people across the nation, but it's hard for us to be in the Capitol in DC influencing policy. But with all of you, we could. With all of you, we could. One last question.